Guys, welcome to Global Insights, and I'm always very glad to host Haim Ben Pesah from New York. Haim, welcome.
Thank you, Alex. Good to see you again.
And if you remember, we were very pleased that Trump won the elections, and we had one night without a sleep to make sure he's elected as president of the United States. Um, but so far, I'm currently looking from Israel point of view. We have a very worrying news coming from the U.S. And Iran talks on the nuclear deal. So, Chaim, first of all, what do you see there? What is the problem?
Well, it looks like what the Trump administration is proposing is to go back to the old Obama deal, more or less. They want 3.67% enrichment for the Iranians and for them to keep their program in place with certain restrictions. That was the Obama deal. The problem with that deal is they can easily, very quickly, build nuclear bombs in that situation. It was terrible when Donald Trump suggested negotiations. There shouldn't be any negotiations with Iran. Iran violates all their agreements. Iran has never kept any agreement they've ever signed. So there shouldn't be any negotiations to begin with. And once there are negotiations, the minimum should be a demand that Iran verifiably dismantle its entire nuclear program. Its entire program should be verifiably dismantled and destroyed, and there should be no nuclear program for Iran. Instead, Trump is offering going back to the Obama deal of limiting a certain amount of enrichment, which is meaningless because if Iran breaks out of the agreement, they can easily go nuclear anyway. And in exchange, Iran not only avoids being attacked militarily, which is the real solution to this, not only do they avoid a military attack, but they also get sanctions relief. Trump is offering them removal of the sanctions, which would mean hundreds of billions of dollars in oil revenue for the Iranian regime, to build a massive nuclear arsenal and to strengthen its industrial base and strengthen its entire economy. It will be catastrophic if the United States does that. And we have a real problem with Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff is the Jewish negotiator for Trump. He's also the Jewish negotiator for Trump on Ukraine, Russia, and on other agreements. Steve Witkoff has become like the Henry Kissinger now of the Trump administration. And just like Henry Kissinger, we have a real problem with him. Steve Witkoff, who happens to be Jewish, but we know from history that sometimes Jews that represent other countries bend over backwards in a way that's harmful to Israel and the Jewish people. And Steve Witkoff is someone who has a long relationship with the Arab Muslim countries that are against Israel. For instance, he received $623 million from Qatar. Qatar is the country that hosts Al Jazeera, the television station that reaches hundreds of millions of Arab and Muslim viewers and that calls daily for the destruction of the United States, of Israel, of the Western world, calls for Islamic world conquest. They supported the Hamas terrorists on October 7th. The to have Qatar, which is the country that sponsors Al Jazeera, a country that finances the Hamas terrorists, a country that finances Hezbollah, a country that works in support of every terrorist cause under the sun, to have them give $623 million to Steve Witkoff to buy one of his hotels when he was on the verge of bankruptcy. He was going bankrupt, and Qatar rescued him. So he has been bought off by Qatar in effect. He owes them. And this is the negotiator that Trump picks on something so crucial as the possibility of Iranian nuclear bomb making. Again, to give you an illustration of what Steve Witkoff is like, he's the one who negotiated the deal before Trump even became president to release 1,000 Muslim terrorist mass murderers from Israeli prisons. You remember before Trump took office, they had an agreement before he even got into office, and in the agreement, They released 1,000 Muslim terrorists, 1,000 Muslim terrorist murderers from Israeli prisons. And Witkoff was the one who was involved in that agreement, and he engaged in direct face-to-face negotiations with the Hamas terrorists who carried out the October 7th attack. And not only that, he said in an interview that the Hamas terrorists are not as extreme as everybody says. They're not so extreme. This is who's leading the negotiations, and we see very troubling signs from the negotiations. We see that the Iranians are very pleased. They say we're making very good progress, and Trump and Witkoff are very pleased. We have a lot to worry about. I think Israel, I think Israel should go in and with or without the United States and militarily take out as much of Iran's nuclear program as possible. I think that Israel has to do that because there's nothing worse than the possibility of having a regime, a fanatic regime like that with nuclear weapons, with weapons of mass destruction. And I think that we're facing that danger right now.
Yeah, I would like to elaborate on what actually Israel proposed or suggested to do with the Iranian nuclear program and why. Because maybe not everyone understand why actually it's bad to have an agreement in place. So let me explain. What actually Netanyahu proposed to Trump is to require from Iran to dismantle all the equipment and to give up on already enriched uranium. Only in this case we can say we managed to prevent Iran from going to the ability of using nuclear weapons. In any other agreement, and I mean any other agreement, that even doesn't matter what level of what percentage of the uranium they are allowed to enrich. It doesn't matter because once you have the raw materials, it takes, and you have the equipment in place, it takes days to week to have a 90% enrichment, and actually this is the bomb grade uranium. And once that's why all the other agreements, they are not relevant. So the only agreement which can work is to just to demand from Iran to give up on already enriched uranium, which is probably, according to what is published, is enough to create six nuclear bombs. They already have uranium for six nuclear bombs, and they have to give up on it. And of course, the equipment, if equipment is in place, all this is irrelevant, and just would be a decision of Iran to go for nukes. And I think that Iran is currently desperately, they want just to earn time. They understand that currently the situation is not in favor of Iran because Trump administration is in the White House, and they just need to pass they need the time to pass, and then they will see what happens. So they're currently in the weak point, and if we coming and internally in Iran, we know they have a lot of problems. And if we are now, what we are going to do is to lift the sanctions and to allow them to keep the equipment and to keep the enriched uranium. Well, it's a disaster. It's a really big disappointment, and it's actually a big problem, I think, for Israel, and it's a big problem for the entire world. I am not sure that Israel alone can destroy the nuclear program of Iran. I think we can damage it severely. But again, they already have 60% enriched uranium, probably enough, for six bombs, and that's you cannot destroy this by any attack, at least not an Israel attack, I think. So the situation is really bad, and we need here an involvement of the United States, who will demand from Iran to fulfill these conditions. And I believe that if United States consists on doing that, Iran would withdraw, and they would eventually, I think, give up and be ready to accept the conditions. And besides that, we see here that the more and more involvement between Putin and the Trump administration, and even on the Iran matter, we see involvement of Putin. And again, I'm not that happy that this happens with regard to the war in Ukraine. And I'm not happy if this is what would happen in the Middle East. Just to remind you, just 2 days ago, Russia actually they signed the agreement before, but they now approved the agreement with the Iran for strategic cooperation, and all this is actually it's a very bad moves, and I cannot give any other good explanation for that.
By the way, I should have mentioned this in the beginning. With your permission, I want to dedicate our discussion to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls for Sharon Mitman, Malka Bat Meir, and Allegra Bat Shlomo. I agree with you completely. And as you mentioned, Alex, we worked very hard to elect Donald Trump because the Democrats wanted to sanction Israel. We were in a lot of trouble in the election, and we worked very hard to elect Donald Trump. But if you recall, in the videos we did, I always warned that there are dangers also with Donald Trump. That could also come back to haunt us, and I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing that Trump's aversion to anything military is causing a real problem here. And I again, as far as Israel is concerned, I think that a commando attack by Israel, in other words, the Israelis sending in commandos on the ground to break in to the areas where you cannot attack from the air, they'd have to break in and invade. I think it's possible that Israel has done such spectacular things militarily. We saw with the beepers. I mean, and we saw, of course, in our prior wars, Israel has done amazing things militarily in the past. And Israel, I know that Israel has contingency plans that potentially could do that. Also, there's another thing Israel can do aside from just attacking the nuclear program. I don't know, by the way, if Israel can destroy the entire nuclear program. You might be right. They may not be able to destroy the entire thing. I think they can destroy a major portion of it and set the Iranians back. Um, but there's something else Israel can do, the Israeli Air Force can do. They can bomb the Iranian oil fields and the Iranian harbor. And if they bomb that, that will devastate Iran's economy, devastate their economy. They won't be able to export oil for at least a year, and their economy is in terrible shape now. Their currency is 1 million rials to $1. I mean, they're in desperate shape. Many days of the week, there's no electricity in Iran. A country that's so rich in oil can't provide electricity to its own people. They can't provide drinking water to their own people in many parts of Iran. Their economy is in ruins. And if Israel destroys their oil fields and destroys their harbors where they would ship the oil, that could have a devastating consequence and could lead to the overthrow of the Iranian regime. So that also is something that I think Israel should do that. I think that and if the Trump administration and other countries would condemn Israel for doing it, they would condemn Israel. They'd be against Israel for doing it, but nothing is worse than a nuclear Iran. That's the worst of all possible options. By the way, one other thing. Iran has certain highways and roads all over the country which they need to transport things and for the country to be one country. They need those roads and those highways. Who built the highways and roads in most of Iran? Israel built it in the days of the Shah. Israel knows all of the highways, all of the roads, all of the connection points in Iran. If Israel were to take those out, again, it would have a devastating effect on the economy. I think Israel can do a lot, but I don't think there's any chance. Netanyahu is not going to do that.
No.
Netanyahu, unfortunately, is not going to do that, and I think that puts us in a dangerous position. Let's hope and pray that this situation doesn't turn into a disastrous Obama-like agreement. I hope and pray.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it brings Putin, as it was suggested by the Russians probably that the current stockpile of Iranian enriched uranium would be transferred to Russia or would be under Russian control. These ideas, which is currently discussed seriously by the United States, I don't know. It's very, very frustrating, frankly speaking.
Putin just recently, just as another example, he proposed a ceasefire on Easter. He said on Easter there'll be a ceasefire and immediately attacked again after proposing ceasefire. Anything they do, you can't trust anything they do. I mean, it's so obvious you can't trust what they do. And so it's just it's really it's a bad situation. I think we need Israeli leaders that are willing to go independent. I think we and that are willing to take independent action because Israel does have military power if Israel wants to use it. But we'll see what happens. God willing, let's hope that the negotiations don't succeed, although right now it looks like they're moving forward.
Okay, Haim Ben Pesach, thank you very much. Let's keep our eyes open on what's going on, and thank you again. Guys,
Thank
stay
you.
tuned for more on Global Insights.
Thank you, Alex.